والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. إن الأبرار يشربون من كأس كان مزاجها كافورا عينا يشرب بها عباد الله يفجرونها تفجيرا. So we talked about these two verses, about how the abrar and who they are and the conditions of our good deeds being accepted and having their desired effect, what those are. These abrar, what they're doing is they're drinking from a cup, a container that is filled with water or whatever it is from a spring that has kafur mixed in it and so on. That this spring is something that the ibadullah drink from, and because ibadullah here means those who were obedient servants of Allah. It's something special. They drink from the cup and container, these are drinking from the source itself. And the source, which is the spring, they are the source of this spring. يُفَجِّرُونَهَا تَفْجِيرًا. They're the ones who make it burst. And making it burst and gush out doesn't mean that they have to dig. They will it, and it is. The way Allah wills things, and they are, and they come into existence. That's how far we got. Now here, we got to roll our sleeves up a bit, and we've got to fasten our seatbelts because it's going to get a little bumpy. Because it's going to be a little tough. But inshallah, we can simplify it as much as possible, but the rewards are good. Inshallah, you will appreciate what we get out of this part of the lecture. Allama Tabatabai here, after these two verses, he'll tell you something. Who was Allama Tabatabai again? He was one of our greatest, if not the greatest, of the contemporary Shia school of thought. The greatest maybe contributor to the Shia school of thought. When it comes to ideology, when it comes to tafsir of Quran, it comes to aqaid, it comes to philosophy, it comes to history, it comes to everything. That's why you call him Allama. I've noticed in different cultures, they use the word Allama loosely, a little more loosely. Yes, even a reciter, a person who recites for the Ahlul Bayt, which is of course a very high thing, but they will use the title Allama for him in other cultures. In the Hausa culture, Allama means a person that knows a little bit too much. He's not your normal everyday Ayatollah / Sheikh / Maulana. No. He's someone who has gone into lots of different fields of study and has mastered them. We don't have too many Allamas. Out of every 1,000, out of every 1,000 Ayatollahs, maybe you'll have one Allama. Yes? That they go into everything. Astronomy, even. Mathematics. He's a mujtahid, he's a faqih, but at the same time he knows these things. Philosopher, mystic and irfan and arif, spirituality, tafsir, history, all of these things. Allama Tabatabai was one of those. Was one of the very, very few that we have ever had. Anyway, he says that here it is very, very likely in these verses that these abrar are drinking, that they are bursting, that they are drinking from the spring, from the container, all of that, that these verses are an embodiment of our actions in this life. What do I mean? When you look at these verses, these two verses that we just had, they are all, the verbs in all of them are in the present tense. It says, إِنَّ الْأَبْرَارِ يَشْرَبُونَ. They are drinking from these containers. They are drinking from the spring. They are bursting it. It doesn't say they are gonna or they did. It says they are doing. It's what it gets across, this present tense, we call it mudari', is that it's something continuously happening. This is the verb. And Allah knows that there's a past tense, present tense, future tense. Why did He choose this? That's point number one. Point number two, as we go on into the verses, they talk about the other things that these individuals, the abrar, the ibadullah, are doing. Pay close attention. Pay close attention, not play. Pay close attention. It goes on to say, the verses, yufuna bin nadr. They are fulfilling their nadr, their nazr. Yakhafuna yawman. They have fear of a day, the day of judgment, of course. And on it goes on. يُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامِ. They feed the hungry and the miskin, the poor one, the asir and the yatim, the orphan, the prisoner of war. They feed all of them. They are feeding. So we have verbs in the present tense. Some of these verbs are talking about, this world and this life. Some of the verbs are talking about the hereafter. But they're all the exact same verb tense. And they are all in the same context, these verses. Right? Let me read it for you. Well, it goes like this. I don't have it in front of me. Once again. So you get the context. The abrar are drinking from a container. The abrar are drinking from a spring. They are bursting at these springs themselves. They are feeding the poor. They're feeding the miskin, yes, the poor one. They are feeding the orphan and the prisoner of war. They are fulfilling their nazar, and they are fearing the day of judgment. They're all in the same context. But look, one has to do with Yawm al-Qiyamah. One has to do with what we're doing now in this life. Allama Tabatabai explains so beautifully here, in like 2 lines, but it takes us so long to understand it and ponder over it. That these first verses that we're talking about what these greats are doing there is an embodiment of what they are doing here now. That's why the same verbs and the present tense of these verbs is being used. So beautiful. But what do you mean? In other words, in the dunya, what they are doing is in the form of actions. That same thing they're doing in the akhirah is the taking on the form of drinking. What are they doing here? They are feeding the poor. They are feeding the orphan. They are feeding the prisoner of war. They are fearing Allah. They are fulfilling their nazar. This same thing, while it's happening here, something's happening in another dimension. In another place, another, as I said the other day, matrix, if you want to call it. When you are doing the action here, at the same exact time, something else is happening somewhere else. And it's not even something else. It is the exact same thing that you are doing. It's not 2 things. It's not like I'm doing something good here, and then there, something else is taking place. There, they give me something else. No. While I'm doing it here, my hand is moving here, something is happening there at the same time. Example? Let me give you an example. When you go to these movies, theaters, which I haven't been to in like 25 years, so I don't know how progressed they are and how developed they are now. Back then, I remember you would put on these like 3D glasses. One was red, one was blue, and like you put it on, and then the same movie that you were watching in 2 dimensions, all of a sudden became 3 dimensions. Is it something different, or did you change your perspective? Did you change your glasses? You changed your glasses, or else that is the same thing it was. Allah Ta'ala explains here, because of those verbs, they are exactly the same style and tense. It's saying they're feeding poor, they're drinking from the wine, from the spring of heaven. At the same time. The same exact verb, the same exact context. He says when you're doing these things, that same thing, if you look at it from a barzakhi perspective, from a Yawm al-Qiyamah perspective, what do you see? You see something else. As I said the other day, we're fasting right now, we're hungry. But the angels, when they're looking at us, they're like, oh my God, look at these guys, they're partying. That's why Allah calls Shahr Ramadan a feast and banquet. Because He's looking at it with His glasses. But I'm looking at it with my glasses. Wow. These are an embodiment of our actions. So then can someone say, why is God so evil and why does He punish people? No. If I'm doing something, that thing that I'm doing is my punishment. Let me give you some examples from the Quran. I haven't written the address here, but when people die, it is told to them by the angels, لَقَدْ كُنْتَ فِي غَفْلَةٍ مِّنْ هَذَا. Look around you. You see everything going on around you? You were negligent and oblivious of this. لَقَدْ كُنْتَ فِي غَفْلَةٍ. غفلة. You had ghaflat. When do we have ghaflat? When there's nothing there? Or no, when there's something there but I'm oblivious to it. When I'm oblivious to it but it's there. When we die, the veils are lifted, then we see things in their real light. Here we thought it was like that. There we see the true color of it. لَقَدْ كُنْتَ فِي غَفْلَةٍ مِّنْ هَذَا. You were oblivious of this. فَكَشَفْنَا عَنْكَ غِطَاءَكَ. We have raised your veil. This is Quran. We have raised the veil off of your eyes. You're not seeing the same anymore. You were the problem. That thing was the thing itself. You weren't looking. Your glasses, we changed your glasses. We lifted the veil. لَقَدْ كَشَفْنَا عَنْكَ غِطَاءَكَ فَبَصَرُكَ الْيَوْمَ حَدِيدٌ. So today your eyes are very sharp. Now that you have passed away, now you're seeing things the way they really are. That's why the Imams have told us, النَّاسِ نِيَامٌ. The people are asleep. They're asleep. It is only when they die that they wake up. إِذَا مَا تُنْتَبَهُ. When you're asleep, you see dreams. Is that reality? Dreams aren't reality. Although, of course, philosophically, there's a lot to say here. But no, let's just talking, layman's terms here. When we're asleep and we see dreams, is that reality? No, we wake up like, thank God it wasn't real. Thank God. When we wake up, we see reality, right? This hadith is saying the people are asleep. It's only when they wake up when they die that they wake up, aka, or in other words, when they die that they see things the way they really are. That's number one. Another example, this one's a little better. Surah Al-Ankabut, verse 54, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَأْكُلُونَ أَمْوَالَ الْيَتَامَى ظُلْمًا إِنَّمَا يَأْكُلُونَ فِي بُطُونِهِمْ نَارًا. Indeed, those who consume the property of the orphans out of zulm, out of transgression, it's not theirs, but they take it. Yes, this would happen, and still happens. The orphan has his own wealth and belongings, but people will take it because he doesn't have a guardian. Allah says, these people are only eating fire and putting fire in their bellies, ingesting fire into their bellies. Is this metaphorical? Is this metaphorical, or is that luqma, that meal, that bite that I eat and devour, is that itself fire? Well, I'm not burning when I'm having it. So it really is food when I'm devouring it. But the Quran is saying it's fire. Yes, it's fire when you change the glasses that you have on. That's how it is. When we look at it like this, we're like, okay, maybe I should, watch out a little bit more. And this explains that famous verse that you always hear the ulama saying, يَسْتَعْجِلُونَكَ بِالْعَذَابِ. They're asking you for the adab. Where's the punishment? Where's the punishment? وَإِنَّ جَهَنَّمَ لَمُحِيطَةٌ بِالْكَافِرِينَ. But Jahannam is already engulfing the kafirin. Of course, once again, we have to say here, that kafir doesn't mean necessarily non-Muslim. I said this again and again and again. A kafir, kafara. When we say kafara, what does that mean? You have to give kafara for this. It means it's something that covers that sin, covers it up, compensates. Kufr means to hide something. You know it's there, you hide it, you turn away from it. Kuffar are the ones who know the truth and they turn away from it. Although yes, kafir is also used for non-Muslims also. But these rules that we have in the Quran, that these punishments are there for kuffar, doesn't mean just any non-Muslim necessarily. Each of these verses have to be examined separately. Recite salawat. Let's move on to the next verses now. So those verses that we're talking about them having these blessings, they're having it right now. It would have been better if the Quran had said they will have it, right? The reason Allah Ta'ala says that these verses are using the present tense is because of something like this, the embodiment of our actions, the barzakhi form of our actions. When a great spiritual guru sees me and then sees an animal instead, it's not like there are two things here. He's saying my barzakhi form, the barzakhi embodiment of me. When the Quran says that they are donkeys, they are this, they are that, it's talking about their essence. From my perspective, from the barzakhi perspective, this is what they are. So, let's move on to verses 7 and 8 now. Yufuna bin nar, moving to what they're doing in this life now. So we were talking about what they're doing in the heavens, what the embodiment of their actions are in the heavens. What are these actions that they're doing? Verses 7 and 8 are telling us. They fulfill their nazar, their vows, and fear a day whose ill will be widespread. The day of judgment, the ill of that day will be widespread. I personally don't like this translation. I purposely read the translations off of, the famous translations that we have to let us know that sometimes translation isn't very accurate. Sometimes people make judgments based on certain translations, and they will go like all the way and make some very nice findings, but the problem is it's based on translation of Quran, and that translation might have a problem. Right here, the ill of Yawm al-Qiyamah is widespread, it says. The ill, that means, what does widespread mean? That means everyone will feel it. Is that the case or not necessarily? Well, I don't know. Let's look at this verse of the Quran that says, قَالَ عَذَابِي أُصِيبُ بِهِ مَنْ أَشَاءُ. My adab will encompass anyone that I will, Allah says. But, وَرَحْمَتِي وَسِعَتْ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. Here it doesn't say, رَحْمَتِي وَسَعَتْ مَنْ أَشَاءُ. The same verse. It says, my punishment will reach those who I will. And Allah wills it for who? For those who willed it for themselves. But then when it comes to His rahmah and mercy, He says, but, وَرَحْمَتِي وَسَعَتْ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. Here it's not about my will. My mercy encompasses everybody. So the default is what? Mercy or adab? It's mercy. The exceptions are those who will have adab. Oh, that's a different perspective. That's different from what we usually hear. So, keeping this in mind, is it good to translate the verse, whose ill will be widespread and encompassing everybody? No, we have to change the translation a little bit so it fits with the other verses of the Quran. You could say, like another way of translating, whose the news of its ill is widespread. Everyone has heard about its illness and the ill of that day. Or something along those lines. Anyway, let's move on. That's verse 7. Verse 8. And they give food for the love of it, or for the love of Him. One of these two we'll talk about. They give food while they have love of it, or Him, of Allah, to the needy, miskinan, yatiman, the orphan, and asira, the prisoner of war. Okay. So here once again, the translation I have says, they give food for the love of Him, meaning the love of Allah. But here also, well, as you shall see, the translation might not be that accurate. Let's get into the different parts and different segments of this verse. Yufuna bin nadr, the first part. And nadr. So we're going to talk a little bit about nazar, because our whole religion now is nazar, right? MashaAllah, we have summed it all up in a few things. One is interpretation of dreams, one is jinn, and one is nazar. Nazar. And a few other things. And of course, these are things that Islam has spoken about. Islam has emphasized on Suratul Jinn. We have Suratul Jinn. We have another in Islamic fiqh. We have this, and it has been there even before Islam. Inni nadartu ma fi batni muharraran, I think the verse was, and this memory of mine is so off. Nadartu lirrahmani sawman. We have different nadars also. Surah Maryam, we have, Lady Maryam says, I have, or Prophet Zakaria, I think it was. This is so bad. Anyway, Prophet Zakaria says, I have done another to do a sawm, to fast and not speak to anybody. Lady Maryam's mother, when she wants to give birth to Lady Maryam, she says, I have done waqf, or another of what I have in my womb for Allah, for the temple. And then Lady Maryam is born. The mother gets upset because she had done nazar to put her son in the temple, to take care of the temple and to serve God. But all of a sudden it's a girl. It's Lady Maryam, right? And the mother gets upset. She gets upset because I can't send her to the temple. Women weren't going to the temples back then and staying in the temple and being caretakers of the temple. Which is interesting here on the side. Let me just say this. Those who say, oh, you have such a sexist religion and it prefers the males and over the females and so on. The Quran here says, when the mother said, Inni wada'tuha untha, oh Allah, she's a girl. In other words, I'm upset. Oh man. Allah says, Laysa dhakaru kal untha. The male is not like the female. Huh? That sounds like God prefers the female over the male. The only preference males have is that they gotta bring the bread to the table and they gotta run around and work hard. Apparently, in Quranic culture is a little different. Anyway, I don't want to talk too much because then the sisters might give you trouble later tonight when you go home. Alright. So we have this concept of nadr. Now in Islam also we have it, as I said, our Islam revolves around it a lot. Yufuna bin nadr. What is nadr? Let's talk about it in fiqhi terms. What our maraja say about it today, because there are some misunderstandings here as well. Nadr means is a transaction with Allah. Why do I use this word mu'amala, transaction? Why do I say it? Because for it to be an actual nadr, an actual formula has to be recited. It has a sigha to it. A lot of people don't know this. The same way you have to, for example, I don't know, if you are writing up a rent agreement with someone, you write it up, someone else signs it, you sign it, and then you have it. Or at least you agree on it and you shake on it or something. It's a transaction, it's a deal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has this same concept with Him. You have to say something to Him for a real nadr to take place. For it to be binding on you. Of course, if you don't recite the formula, it's okay. It's still a nadr, but it's not a wajib and binding nadr. What is it? It's a mustahab one at most. A lot of times people come up to you, when you become a shaykh, you'll see this. They'll come up to you, they'll say, oh, I did this nazar, but I am stuck in it, man. What was your nazar? And I've heard one of my friends, he had done this. He said, I have done nazar to read all of Shaykh Mutahari's books. At least you should have done nazar to read all of Shaykh Amin's books, because he doesn't even have one. But he did nazar to do, Shaykh Mutahari of all people, who has so many books. What's the way out of it? Well, the first question usually that they will ask you is this, okay, did you recite the nazar formula or not? If you go to your marja's books, of Book of Islamic Law, you'll find this, that nazar right there in the beginning, he'll say, you have to recite the formula. Even saying it in your heart is not enough for it to become wajib on you. You know? Thinking about the words in your mind, not enough. You have to actually say it. Lillahi alayya, like so and so. Or you have it in Farsi, you can say it in Urdu, you can say it in English, whatever. Anything that has that same meaning. With the intention of nazar, then it will become wajib on you. So if someone hasn't done this, at best it will be mustahab for them to fulfill it. Not wajib. That's one. There's also other conditions. For example, if a wife does it without telling her husband, because usually, you know. So here also, some maraj, I don't know if it's all of them or some of them, but they will have a condition that the husband has to have been, you know, in the loop, or else it won't be a wajib nazar, for example. Even some marajit, they'll say the son has to ask his dad. In some marajit, not all marajit. Even if he's baligh, will have to tell his dad before. So here we have conditions for a nazar to become wajib. But once it becomes wajib, yes, it has to be fulfilled. And also, if it's not fulfilled, it might have kafara. These are laws that you have to check in the Risala Amaliyah of your marja. But what's important is, brothers and sisters, we have enough wajibat. We have enough wajibat, and you've got a feel of this over these nights and days that we've been talking about. Taqwa, wajib, haram, wajib. We have enough. Why make something else wajib on you? Yes, sometimes you really feel like you want to do a nazar, go ahead and do it. I'm not advising against it or anything, but I'm just saying we have to be careful what our priorities are when it comes to our religion. What defines my religion? Is it my wajib and haram, or is it my nazar? This is something that we have to be watchful of and careful about. We don't want to limit religion to that. Okay, now here in this verse, it says, Yufuna bin nadr. So those abrar that we were talking about before, those righteous individuals that we were talking about before, what are they doing? Yufuna bin nadr. Righteous individuals are fulfilling their vows, their nadrs. Right here, the Mufassirin, they will tell you that we can tell that this is talking about a specific story, or else nadr and fulfilling nadr and all that kind of stuff isn't one of those major signs of the abrar and the ibadullah, or else we would have it all over the Quran, other places, the same way we have taqwa all over the place in the Quran. We only have one other place, they say, that talks about nazar, and that's Surah Baqarah verse 270. Other than that, we don't have it. So here when it says, these ibadullah, they became ibadullah because of nazar and all that kind of stuff, it must be something specific, or else the Quran would have talked about it more if it was a general condition. Apparently, something is going on here. These are questions that Shaykh Mutahari, for example, will tell you, the Quran has sprinkled things here and there for those who are after it, but they just have to sit down and think a little bit harder. The story of the Hasnain alayhim as-salatu was-salam. We all know the story. We all know the story. I'll just mention it real quickly for those younger ones that might have not heard it, which they've probably heard it as well. Shia and Sunni sources will tell you both, alhamdulillah. We have this in all of them. Of course, we will reach a point, inshallah, in future nights maybe, where we will kind of examine the tafsirs of the Sunni school that are out there, and we will see that, okay, it's not totally agreed upon and consensual. We don't have a consensus on it with the Sunni school of thought, that it was the story of Hasnain alayhi salam that is talking about. But we do have sources, and maybe you can say the majority of their sources will say this too. What the story that we're about to talk about, that yes, Imam al-Hasan, Imam al-Hussein were young, alayhim salam, they were very, very sick. Imam Ali and his wife, Fatima Zahra, alayhim salatu wassalam, they do a nazar for the shifa and the curing, and for Imam al-Hasan and Imam Hussein alayhi salam to get better. And they do get better. And so later on, they decide to fulfill this nazar. How? By fasting 3 days. That's what their nazar was. Okay. So they're fasting. Now, not only Imam Ali and Lady Fatima alayhim salam are fasting, but also Fidda is going to fast. They did the nazar for themselves, but these individuals also fast. Hassan and Hussein alayhim salam also fast. So it shows that they weren't very, very, very young. They were a little bit older, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, I don't know. I haven't looked into this, so I can't make a judgment right now. The problem is, they're living in a time that Medina is in a bad economic state. In the beginning, Medina, the people of Medina were very poor. And the problem was, you had the Ansar, which were the inhabitants of Medina, living there, and then all of a sudden, lots of Muhajirin come. People who are migrating from Mecca, because the order came from Allah that you have to migrate. Anyone who stays in Mecca, their blood is in their own hands. They have to migrate. The time for migration has come, the Prophet migrated. And the others came with them. Some had no choice and they had to stay. Those were excused. Allah has excused them. But if they could migrate, they had to migrate, because that was the only way they were able to secure their religion. So they all migrated. So all of a sudden, these Ansar who are living in Medina, they see an influx of migrants coming in. Oh my God, what are we going to do? So back then, it wasn't like now. You come, you find your housing, you buy, you rent, whatever. Back then, you had to build houses, and resources were limited back then. Building material, work, labor, it was hard. Back then, now you have bottles of water and bottles of drinks and all that. Back then, water was an amenity. You had to pay for it. Firewood was something people would make money off of, would make living on. They would go in the desert, gather thorns, gather whatever they could get their hands on, come back into the city and sell it. All right. So this is the state. This is the time. And then you have an influx of immigrants. Who's going to address their needs? The Ansar. And that's why they're called Ansar. Ansar means the helping ones, the aids, the ones who aided. Yes, and they're mentioned highly in the Quran. And the Muhajirin made a sacrifice. They left their homes and came. They also are mentioned highly in the Quran. The Shia school doesn't say all of the Sahaba are bad. Most of them were good, as a matter of fact, we believe. But we say just because they were Muhajirin or Ansar and Sahaba doesn't say that they're off the hook forever. No. If they mess up in the end, for example, they can be held accountable. That's what the Shia school believes. But usually you will find those who are after sectarian conflict and division and schism, they'll say the Shia are against the companions of the Prophet. No, who said? We have books upon books about the companions of the Prophet. Anyway, they came in. So what's natural is that there's not going to be enough food out there. The economy is going to go down, especially when you have war after battle, after battle, after battle. right from the second year after migration happened, Battle of Badr, then Battle of Uhud, and so on. So the people, instead of taking care of agriculture, they have to fight and defend themselves. Alright, so we're in this bad state. Now, what does Imam Ali do? Imam Ali alayhi salam, he goes, they say he bought some wheat from a Jewish man by the name of Shamun. He buys it. It's interesting, these stories of Imam Ali, how he would, to make money, like he would build a wall for a Jewish person. The Jews back then, they were very wealthy, as is the case still today. So he buys enough wheat for 5 pieces of bread. He takes it, and this is the interesting part, he takes it home, he gives it to Fatima Zahra, the wheat. Fatima Zahra, with her blessed hands, she grinds the wheat, and then she makes the dough and all that, she makes the bread. That would be great to have such a bread from Lady Fatima Zahra. Inshallah, Yawm al-Qiyamah, and in Jannah we can at least have things from her, inshallah. So so the bread is ready for iftar and all of that. They say, someone knocks at the door. Now, if I'm standing in line for iftar, I'm not ready to give my space in line for iftar, unless, there's some good money involved. But here, someone knocks on the door. Who is it? It's a miskeen. It's a poor person that wants food. They all give their food away. They all give their bread away. And this bread, right now, bread of back then, if you want to translate it into today's terms, it is a full course, like, what did they say? Something course meal, like it. Something course meal, they say? 2-course meal, whatever. It's a full meal, like with the water that you have on the side, oh my God, that's it. Like, that's the best you can get. They give it away. And that night they break their iftar, they do their iftar just with water. That's one version of the story. That the next night, again, another person knocks on the door when they're doing their second day of fast. And then the third night, someone else comes. That's one version of the story. Another version goes like this, that on the same night, these 3 individuals came and took their food. Anyway, whatever it was, you are going to be very, very hungry. If you're not able to break your fast with some carbs, with something, right? Just water doesn't cut it. And then to top things off, what happens is, they only have water and they don't tell anybody. This is a miracle itself, that the Quran disclosed to us that they made this sacrifice. Mufassirin say this. If the Quran had not told us, no one might have ever known that they did such a thing. Which brings me to this conclusion, that who knows how many sacrifices Ahlul Bayt made for our ummah that we never learned about. Now, this is the story. We're going to have to now come and put these verses next to the story and see the conclusions that our Mufassirin have drawn, inshallah, tomorrow. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
My mic has been stolen.
गिरामी आज इफ्तार स्पॉन्सर किया है ब्रदर इकबाल गांजी एंड बहन शमा गांजी ने, ब्रदर मुहिब रज़ा और सिस्टर सादिया ने। प्लीज़ shouldn't have done it. So then you can't take it all in your hand. ठीक है, no problem. और ब्रदर अब्बास राशिद और सिस्टर लैला राशिद ने इनकी बुलंदी दर्जात के लिए नारे सलावत सल्ले अला मुहम्मद व आले मुहम्मद। आपसे दरख्वास्त करूँगा मई जी की 5 मरतबा तमाम अलील मोमिनीन मोमिनात के लिए, बिलखुसूस ब्रदर अबरार काज़मी फिर दोबारा हॉस्पिटल में दाखिल हो गए। 2 दिन घर में रहे, उसके बाद फिर हॉस्पिटल में तबीयत बहुत ज़्यादा ख़राब है। और हमारे बहुत ही मशहूर नवा खान हैं میر حسن، ان کے صاحبزادے کا ایکسیڈنٹ ہوا ہے دبئی میں، 7 سال کا بچہ ہے وہ قاسم زیدی، اس کے لیے بھی اس کو بھی آپ اپنی دعاؤں میں یاد رکھیے گا. تمام مومنین مومنات کے لیے جو مشکلات کا شکار ہیں اور دہشت گردی میں مبتلا ہیں. بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم.